All right, thanks for joining today. And I'll call the September 14th, 2023 meeting of the Police Advisory and Oversight Board into order. So just introduction of board members. I'm Joanna Johnson, Chair.
Lucretia King, Vice Chair.
Tanya Graywind.
Scott Paul.
All right. The next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, second. Any discussion? Oh, okay. All in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion is carried. The next item is to approve the minutes of the August 10th, 2023 meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right. No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion is carried. The next item is to approve the meeting process and procedures. Now, this is the updated version from our edits earlier in the year. Did everyone have an opportunity to look through that? Yeah. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting process and procedures?
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Oh, you got it.
Okay.
Faster.
Any discussion on that at all? No? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Motion is carried. Approve, the next item is to approve the tentative meeting agenda through December 2023. I think you all got a copy of that in the email. Had a
Yes.
chance to look that over. Can I get a motion to approve the monthly meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that? No? I would just say of note that when we did talk to Sergeant Gamrat and then the chief, we did bring up a few other items that might be pertinent, but what we did in this agenda is just move everything forward that we already had set, and so all that will just stay in place at this time until there might be a need for something else, or if there's another event that would take place, we could always change the agenda moving forward, okay?
Do we have a plan for another working group, kind of offline like we did a couple months back?
We don't have anything set at this time. A working group where we have the kind of the meeting where we,
Referred
Just-
to as the brown bag.
yeah,
Brown bag.
we didn't have any of that set up for this year at this point.
No, not that
Yeah.
not that we had on the agenda. The only thing that we're looking at is to get the off-site training for the pursuit simulator. So I'm working with training and development to get that ready for you guys.
Okay,
I'd say
yeah.
before the end of the year, we probably want to do another
Another brown bag.
brown bag, just to set up the first quarter of 24.
All right, and then we could discuss that in the next meeting with the chief prior to the next, and then we can,
Put it on the agenda for next. Yep.
on the agenda. Yep. So with the way the agenda stands right now, right, we agree to have that agenda set, is that correct?
I think so.
Okay, so we can kind of table the other topic.
Yep.
Yep. So all those in favor of the agenda the way it sits right now, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, yeah. Okay, so the motion would be carried. The next item is public comment, and those who wish to address the advisory board must use the sign-in sheet, and speakers must state their name and limited to 3 minutes. Comments should not contain any profanity or personal attacks. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
There is no one signed up.
Okay. Then we will move on to the presentation. This presentation is on the Officer Wellness Program and the Peer Support Team. And this will be presented by members of the Fargo Police Department, and I'll just hand that over to you, Sergeant Cameron.
All right. Thank you for having us. It was kind of an exciting thing when we met with our agenda meeting and you decided to fall on the topic of officer wellness. It's something that I hold very passionate to myself, along with the police department. So what we're going to prepare for you today is something that I'm going to do. Sergeant Jessica White is going to also present, and then Sergeant Matt Siders. So the question at some point is, what is officer wellness? And I'll tell you one thing it is it's a priority of the Fargo Police Department. I've been working there for going on 20 years now. And officer wellness when I started was very different than to what it is now. And the department's done a really good job progressing. And I would say we're probably at our strongest point we've ever been with officer wellness. As you're going to see in some of the things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about a peer support team and the functions that they do, the training that they go through, and some of the events that we've taken care of. That includes our mentoring program, Valor training. Sergeant White's going to cover that. Struggle Well will be covered by Sergeant Siders, and then that'll also include our physical and mental health check-ins. So the peer support team, I've been a peer support team member for probably 15 of the 19 years that I've been here. And one of the cool things about the peer support team is when I started, it was pretty small. I did a lot of peer support stuff in high school, and so it was a passion of mine. So when I came here and asked to join the team, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. So what we've done is through the years is we've continually put new people on this peer support team. So these members that are chosen, they're chosen by officers. So you're chosen by your peers. And as you continue to move on, we have new peers come, right? So as you guys have been on the board, you've seen new groups of cadets come in. And each and every one of them bring kind of a unique mindset to something and kind of a unique way of communicating with the officers that they work with. So we want to make sure that we capture that. So every couple of years, we will have the peers elect a couple of different individuals and then put them on the team. So that's what we do. We choose officers by the officers choosing them. We already covered that. The teams go through what we call critical incident stress management, or CISM. It's nothing that we came up with. It's a nationally known type of operation where it gives us cards to basically read through, and we call it embracing the awkwardness, right? So you just got to kind of go through and embrace it, and then it's something that really works well for us. We're going to talk about defusing, debriefings, and then one-on-one sessions. As you can see up there, I should have covered it. We have a captain, 7 sergeants, 13 officers, and 5 chaplains. The neat thing about the 7 sergeants are, as we've gone through peer support, you'll see that a lot of the sergeants were peer support team members and have kind of worked their way up into leadership role, which is super important for our peer support group because it really makes sure that you have people that understand that if you have a critical incident, it's not something that I can define. It's something that everyone has to define for themselves. And with supervisors in those positions, it's been very helpful for us to make sure we get officers defused and debriefed and get the critical incidents and stuff taken care of so we can get them back on the street and doing well. We've also been, I wouldn't say we've been told, but we have heard that we do a really good job and our team is well-rounded. So a lot of agencies have reached out to us and we've done different defusings and debriefings for officer-involved shootings, for officers who have died in the line of duty, for school shootings. We had gone to Red Lake. That was quite a while ago. Jess, do you remember? So we're kind of one of the local experts on doing it, and I think we do a pretty good job with it. So we definitely reach out and help others. Sanford has started to bring on a bunch of people, and they've asked us how we've started our program, and told them it's taken like 19 years to get it here. So we'll help you out as best we can. So what do? We use defusings and debriefings. It's the CISM model, one of the biggest things in it, and why I won't cover any specific incidents that we've defused or debriefed today is because it's very confidential. So confidentiality in these things are very important to the people to make sure that they tell us what it is that's going on. So in a defusing, it's conducted right after the critical incident, before the officers go home. So if you have an incident, let's just use an example of a younger individual who has passed away or something in their presence, it would be something that the supervisor would notify one of our team members on, and we'd say, hey, we've got 4 officers that went through this. Can we do a defusing? Usually we would bring in a couple members, maybe one of the chaplains, and we would do the defusing. During the defusings, it's important for us as trained CISM instructors and peer support team members to just kind of keep an eye on individuals to see how they're doing. After you've done it a little while, you kind of start to see the telltale signs of, we definitely need to check up with this individual, or we should really follow up with a debriefing. So during that, the process is kind of interesting. It's on a card, and it's one of the things that when I've started doing them, you have the card and you show it to them and you say, I'm going to be looking at this card and we're going to go through this process because I know it works. So this is a pretty dumbed down version of it. I didn't put everything in there, but these are the steps that we use. So you just do an introduction, you introduce your team and the officers that are on the scene. You make sure that the people that are there should be there, so that you don't, one, introduce people to trauma that they don't have to be introduced to, and 2, have supervisors or people that weren't on the scene brought into that so that the people can share exactly what it is that they got going on. Then there's the exploration portion of it. What happened and how is it affecting you? And then you have the information, what you can expect, what to do, points of contact, and resources. These defusings have been super impactful. I remember the first one that I went to, and I can share this because I had gone through it. It was something very unorthodox to me. We had officers were pinned down by a guy that was shooting outside of a building, and I was going through things as a new officer that I had never experienced before. You have tunnel vision, you have thoughts of retreating. All of these things go through your mind as a new officer, and we did this almost 19 years ago because I was in training at the time, and it was super helpful to understand what the other officers were going through, that they had seen the same thing. And once I was confident enough to tell them exactly what had happened and what I was feeling after others shared, it was very, very helpful for me to help move on from that situation. So that defusing is something that is very important. We want to make sure that we get done very soon after the critical incident, usually that night. The next thing we would move into would be debriefings. So debriefings are going to be more formal than the defusing. It's going to be conducted 24 to 48 hours after the event. Some of them have to be pushed out a little bit further just because of circumstances of the incident, things going on, but we like to have those 24 to 48 hours after that event occurs. And we follow basically the same stuff but there's more steps to it. So you have the introduction. So you have the team introduction. We usually will bring in a mental health specialist at that time, probably a chaplain, and then again, make sure that everybody that's there should be there. Again, just for that confidentiality and sharing piece. Then the facts part of it, what it is that you did and what role did you play. I should say, who are you and what role did you play? The interesting thing about that is what I've learned over the years is once you start breaking these things down, you start understanding why someone did something, and it kind of answers that question you have in your head, or that anger or a misunderstanding of something. So I'll say who I am and what I did and why I did it, and they're like, oh, well, that makes sense now. So very important part of it. Then your thoughts, what was your oh no moment? Like, when did you realize at this point, like, this is serious? So it seems very different for everybody, and it's kind of one of those things, again, that's very eye-opening for some people. What was your reaction to it? So what was the worst part of the incident for you? And then the symptoms. So how do you know this is affecting you? And I'll be transparent in the fact that my symptoms have changed over the 19 years. And it's been very important to have that leadership up in there and the people who have worked through this peer support team to understand that, because like I said, I used to have tunnel vision, but now my symptoms are a little bit different, right? So it's just kind of neat to walk people through that. Then we have the teaching phase. That's kind of when a lot of us will actually say, hey, I actually experienced the same thing. This is what you can do. Here's some resources that you have. Some physical instruction to make sure that you're getting rid of all the toxins in your bodies and not moving to substances you shouldn't be using, and don't sell your car right away or quit your job. Don't make these big life decisions at that point. And then we have a reentry phase. So we do some reassurance at that point, some tie-ups, make sure they have a plan, and then again, reiterate the confidentiality. And then probably my favorite part of it is we always have food afterwards. And it's one of the strongest components of it is everybody sits in this room and hears about all of the things that happened and how it's affecting them. And then when you move them out and give them some food, they actually will start opening up, and that's where the healing really starts. So one of the things that's been very important in the process for us. So any questions on the peer support end of it? Defusings, debriefings?
Yeah, I had something I just wanted to clarify. So, how do the officers get the peer support? I mean, you're just watching. Are they able to ask for it? Do they need to ask for it? Or is it like suggested, or is it mandatory, or
Yeah, that's a good question. It is not automatic, right? It seems to be more automatic than it used to be. So I will tell you this. Yes, you can ask for it, but most of the supervisors on the streets understand that, hey, this is something that we've done in the past, something that we've moved forward to, that we'll talk about in the mentoring program here in the next portion of it. Will kind of help maybe answer that question. But usually the supervisor will contact a peer support team member or a peer support team leader and say, hey, we had this incident, this happened, these officers were involved. Could you send someone in and do a defusing? Usually we'll send someone in. The interesting part is they just don't leave the scene for the most part on those, so it can be kind of hit and miss on how long it might take. And we do our defusing. Officers can ask for one-on-one defusals, so I have had that. As you can about imagine, you have officers who are veteran officers who have experienced a lot of things and learned how to deal with them, where a new officer may not. So something as simple as I would look at a traffic crash as being not a critical incident. They may find it as a critical incident. And one thing they teach us is we cannot determine what your critical incident might be. So during this mentoring program and stuff that we're moving forward with, we try to reiterate that I can't define your critical incident. So please feel free to come forward and we'll definitely do that for you. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and you did also say that is it during the first part that you have a mental health specialist,
Mental health specialist.
like
So yeah,
a
so
psychologist or a counselor, or
yeah, so we team with the village. Usually they'll come in and they'll talk about the mental health aspect of it when we have a mental health provider come in. We do have some of our team members who do really well with that. And depending on the group or the availability of the village, they've never said we don't have anybody. But one of the members who just retired was super great at that part and had been trained in it. So we used him quite a bit. So yeah, the mental health providers are very important with that. And one thing when we first started the team, or when I should say when I first joined the team, it was you didn't have a lot of confidence in people outside of our group. And when we talk about officer wellness and the steps that we've taken, I think the department and our team has done a really good job making sure that people feel confident about the people that we're bringing in, that they're competent and they care about them. Because one thing as an officer is you always question that, right? It's a hard group to get into. So I think we've done a really good job with that. So I would say that they're more accepted now than ever.
You mentioned that there's 5 chaplains. Is that?
Yep.
So is a chaplain involved in each one of these defusing or debriefings?
Not every one of them. We haven't had 5 for a super long time. We're continuing to grow. We actually have 2 more applicants for that.
Sure.
They just went through the CISM training. So all 5 of ours have done that now. So it's something that we're definitely going to bring them in. It's nice for them to be able to follow up after the fact, not just in the sense of a Christian aspect of it, but the caring aspect of it. So it's been something that we definitely brought them all into the fold with. We had one that had come in and wanted to sit through the process, and I needed someone to do that, and he hadn't been taught in CISM. yet. But because of that incident, we decided he pushed for all of them to go through that process because they wanted to be involved in it. So yeah.
And you mentioned that you partner with the village to bring in a mental health professional as needed. Is there an attempt in the future to have an on-staff mental health professional?
I know it's been talked about at different meetings and different planning things. I think you see that kind of a movement across the U.S. of that. That would be more of a question, I guess, I would pose to AC Stefanowicz on that. But that's really kind of the movement towards that you see a lot of departments go towards. It obviously comes down to funding.
Sure.
But we have quite a few of the teams and with the city's EAP that we've never been out that. A lot of the new groups that we're bringing in, which Sergeant Siders will talk about, have been super helpful, understanding kind of the officers a little bit. So yeah, I would say that there's possibly a future of that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be able to answer it definitively and say, yes, we're doing that.
Sure.
Yeah. So we'll move into the mentoring portion of it. So one thing we did when we brought on the last group of new peer support team members was we said, hey, we're the old folks. What's something new you can bring to the game? You've just been freshly through the academy. What can we do better? And they talked about joining this mentoring portion that our training and development team does. So the mentoring program, meaning go in and let them know it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to not understand this. It's okay to be scared, those types of things. And it's okay to ask for help. So we went in and we had a lunch with the new officers. We did it in the last academy class and it was very well received. We decided to go not in uniform and just show ourselves as just individuals that care about people because that's what we are. And it was very well received. We had lunch, probably the most open group I've ever spoken with as far as officers go. So after that, we decided to do it on Family Day too, because one of the things that I've learned going through a lot of the critical incidents that I've been through is I'm the last person to understand or notice that I'm going through something. My wife, who I've basically instructed on CISM, has asked me many times, like, what are you dealing with? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's really walked me through that. So one of the portions that we wanted to make sure that we added were on the Family Day, give orientation to the family members and friends. And we hand them out a pamphlet and we talk about, give them information on who we are, what we do, that it's not weird. We talk about the stress in the training program as a new officer, the things that they're going to deal with, the changes they might see in their husband, wife, son, daughter, and then talk about the stressors of police work just in general, and then really kind of hit on the warning signs of it. And it was very well received. And I think the movement towards that is it's okay. I would say wellness wise, the movement that we've seen is it's okay to tell your significant other or friend what you're going through, where before a lot of officers really kept that inside. And that's really kind of what ate them up and got us moving in this direction. So I thought that was really neat to do that for the first time. We gave them all the pamphlets and our contact information, and then plan on continuing with that. So that's the peer support team mentoring and family session.
So do you have a follow-up sessions at all with the family, or can the family reach out if they see something, but they don't think, their loved ones getting the help or bringing it,
I think it's a great idea and something I can bring up to our team. It's sometimes hard to get all of the families back together again. Usually, unfortunately, it takes a critical incident that's never a good incident to get everybody back together again. So our hope is that the information we sent them and reaching out to them and letting them know, and the continued education, it'll kind of be like, if I can go back to 19 years ago, peer support was taboo. It was just a really weird thing to do. And through these years of passionate, caring people have moved up, we see these things moving forward from that. And to be honest, most of the officers, when you asked, can they reach out? Can they tell you? They'll ask, when are we doing the debriefing? When are we doing the defusing? So-and-so struggling with something. So we have moved greatly in the officer wellness. So I think our next piece is going to be this. So making sure that we reach out to them and make ourselves available is very important.
I think having the culture where that is normal is so important versus I think maybe the older generation may have viewed that as a sign of weakness in the past, right? And as we've grown over the years, I think now it becomes. Have you found that maybe a generational impact there, where some of the younger officers, when they come in, are more willing to view that as a normal part of their life?
I would say the culture change that was most surprising to me was the veteran officers that I would have started with that were pretty gruff back 19 years ago, really kind of came around to it and see the benefit in a lot of this. I would say the new generation is more family orientated. Again, why we bring in new folks, right? So was one of their ideas, and they said, "Hey, yeah, this is normal for me, but what about my mom? What about my dad? What about my wife, kids?" And so that's where we're going to move with this, and it's been really cool to see it. So I think we're doing it the right way. I think it's great to bring in these new generations, and it's cool that we changed the old one too.
Absolutely.
Anything else on that? All right. I will turn it over to Sergeant White.
Hi. Thanks for having me. So just a little bit of background about myself. I'm currently a sergeant with our Neighborhood Services Division. I've been with the Fargo Police Department for 15 years. I've also been a part of the peer support team for 10 years too. So I have a pretty lengthy background in that. Spicy memory, as I like to call them. But on that too, I'm also on our department's wellness committee as well, which we kind of focus on a couple different pillars of employee wellness, physical, mental health, financial, all those kinds of things too, where we brought in those mental health check-ins. I think we're going to talk about that later too, which I can definitely go over. But the primary reason I'm here is to talk about the Valor training that we went through. The Valor training is a Department of Justice grant-funded training. So we selected about 15 members of our department to go through a 4-day training, which was online, where we went through the Valor training itself. And then we took those individuals and we went through like a train the trainer course where we're able to go through the training again and then learn how to implement it within our agency, and which is what we've done most recently. So just so everybody's on the same page, resiliency is the ability to navigate adversity and grow and thrive in the face of challenges. So resiliency is kind of a buzzword nowadays, but how we've kind of molded it into our thing has really helped us kind of move past some of the trauma that we've been through. So it focuses on 3 different categories: the mind, energy, and connection. I'm just going to kind of break down, give you like a crash course of what we went over. So stop me if you have any questions, okay? So one topic that we focus on is learned optimism. And each one of these is kind of like a training where, you know, Sean and I stood in front of everybody, talked for about 15 minutes, and then we had these breakout sessions where everybody was kind of in these small groups, went through a couple different exercises, kind of working the skill set, and then came up with like real life examples and kind of had those really good discussions, because we never really have those opportunities to sit down and kind of talk with each other, kind of learn different things about each other. So it was a really cool experience for everybody, and we got a lot of really good feedback. So one of the topics that we talked about is learned optimism. So noticing and expecting the positive, focusing on what you can control, and take purposeful action. Believe it or not, we're surrounded by a lot of negative things. And so you actually have to force yourself to be a little bit optimistic. And when I talk about optimism, I don't want you to think that I'm always thinking that it's like sunshine and rainbows and just like this perfect world. It's more like a realistic spin on it, where I know that there's still good things in this world, and I have to kind of force myself to find those things. So it's just really just looking at situations differently and then forward thinking and getting kind of people in that mindset, because it's a practice skill. Another section we talked about is avoiding thinking traps, which really kind of comes forward when you've kind of fallen away from that optimistic mindset and you find yourself in what we call thinking traps. So it's changing counterproductive patterns and thinking that can undercut resiliency. So we talk about 5 different categories when we talk about thinking traps: mind reading, me, them, catastrophizing, and helplessness. So one of the most common ones, and I'll explain this to you, is a them thinking trap, always thinking that it's somebody else's fault as to why these things are happening to me. And that's a very common one that anybody can find their situation in. But it's one of those things where, how do I get out of that? And we focus on the emotions that you're feeling, the thoughts that are coming into your head, and how do you kind of work through that? Because a shocker to a lot of people is that nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourself, right? Real-time resiliency. So shutting down counterproductive thinking and build focus and confidence. So if you're somebody that doesn't enjoy public speaking or talking in front of groups or maybe being on TV, a lot of counterproductive thoughts can kind of creep in the back of your head, right? So I was sitting in the back listening to Sean talk the entire time and constantly thinking about, okay, like, you can do this, you're confident, you've talked about this stuff before, and just kind of building that focus and confidence. I was actively using those skills in the back of the room there. We talked about signature character strengths, so it's identifying and using your top character strengths to stay energized and whole. So if anybody has ever done like a Strength Finders or a DISC profile through like your employer, maybe college or something like that, it's very similar to that, where we focus on your top or your most dominant character strengths. That was a really interesting process for everybody because everybody was so different. And some people had some character strengths that you wouldn't really necessarily think were dominant for them. And then we kind of dissected those and kind of talked about them as in those small breakout sessions. That was really helpful for a lot of people to kind of understand each other, in a sense. We talk about energy self-assessment. So the biggest thing about energy is I have to know what depletes me and what does that look like. Body language, thoughts, feelings, even physical effects, and then who does that really harm? And just having those like open and honest conversations with everybody in the police department so they have a better understanding of that. Gratitude. So like I kind of talked about, we're surrounded by a lot of negativity and what we see in the world. And so you have to cultivate gratitude by noticing and reflecting on what is good in the world. HTGS stands for Hunt the Good Stuff. The Valor program is kind of molded after a military program where they kind of talk about that stuff. So when we talked about hunting the good stuff, a lot of the military guys kind of rolled their eyes at us. But they actually really enjoyed the way that we did the training because they said in the military it was like a box check and ours was a little bit more in depth. So we liked that. We liked that feedback. Joy multiplier. We talked about having those conversations and connections with people where you're building trust and connection through sharing in others' positive experiences. And this is a lot of stuff that we don't necessarily do with each other at work, right? And so it's kind of refocusing that and making sure that we're, listening to people when they're talking to us. We're not messing around on our phones, all those kind of things that we've kind of gone away from, when you think about those communication skills. And then the ideal model is like a 5-step program, or not program, a 5-step model to kind of help you work through difficult conversations. So if you've ever read like Crucial Conversations or anything like that, it's kind of along the same lines where you're expressing to the person that you truly care about them and then kind of focusing on the things that you really want to get off your plate and so that you guys can kind of come full circle and really move forward with those things in a positive way. That's all I have for Valor. If you guys have any questions at all.
I've got one. Is this built into like the academy curriculum or anything like that?
Yep. So this last academy class that would have graduated, they were the first ones to go through that implementation part of it.
Okay.
The class before them, they got thrown to the wolves, and they actually got to go through with the department. So that was actually interesting. So,
what was the feedback from this last class?
the last class?
Yep.
I haven't gotten the feedback from them. I think just really kind of setting the this is like how we do things for them has been really good for them. Kind of like how Sergeant Gamrat said, presenting to them that the peer support team is available to you and this getting ahead of everything. I think that's really worked out well for us.
Great.
Good evening. Thank you again for having us. My name is Sergeant Siders. I am the team lead on the wellness committee, or the team. I like to call it team just because it makes it a little bit better, a little less informal, and we work to improve the wellness of our department. So first thing I'm going to talk about is just struggle well. So how did we come there? So we have about 14 members on our wellness team from different parts of the department. And we come together so we can get different ideas on how to best implement wellness, right? Because different areas need different things at different times. And we kept spinning our wheels because the easy one is physical, right? We need to work out, we need to be fit for our job. But we kept spinning our wheels on that. We have a gym. We actually have 2 gyms, 2 areas where at any time our employees can go work out. It's a great facility. But how do we build upon that physical? Because we've done that. Let's branch out into different things. So we were looking for a structured program, an educational system that would help us not only year to year, but grow that 3, 5, 7, 10 year into the future. And that's where Struggle Well came in. So Struggle Well is based upon another military program, but then they tuned it for first responders. And this is based upon post-traumatic growth. So post-traumatic stress disorder is very common, right? We go through something, we develop stress, we see that as an ailment. We're going to turn that to post-traumatic growth, and the expression there is that we can grow through what we go through, right? So we're looking at this as a positive experience. Yes, we have stress, we have these different things, but we can go through that with resiliency and an education program. So we educate the employees on what they're going through, the different resiliency techniques, and you're going to see a lot of overlaps in these different programs we have. So we have our wellness team, but we also have our peer support team. A lot of the peer support team members are on our wellness team. And then we start to get into where we start to educate on the resiliency, where that's our valor starts to come in, right? So a lot of these things overlap, but they also have their own unique areas where we can kind of hit those things that maybe we're missing with just one program. And what we've learned through, different exposures, we go through a lot of IACP, so International Association of Chiefs of Police, is best practices across the country. And the more resources you have available to your officers, the better you are, because you're going to be able to reach people where they are and in their format. Our young people like to text. Our old people don't like to text. They like a phone call, right? So we can have those different apps. We can have things to read. We can have things online. But also regulation, right? As we go through these stresses, how do we best regulate those things? That's where our peer support team comes in. We have those conversations. We have the disclosure. We're going out, we're telling those stories. Those are our diffusings, things like that, where we're telling the struggles we're going through. And then we also work through sharing our own story, right? That's part of the growth where we go through. So you think of any traumatic event you've been in, you're bottling that inside, right? Once you get that out, that story out, you start to improve, right? And the last one's going to be service. And we'll talk about that as we go through. So Struggle Well is going to give us the platform to go through. So what you're going to see here is our wellness triangle, and this is what we use again so that we get away from that physical and that we can look towards improving not only our department, the people within, but also the individual. So we cover 4 areas. We cover the mind, body, finances, and spirit. This is a holistic approach to our wellness program. So I'm going to start with the physical, because that's going to be our baseline. Obviously, it's the easiest one. Again, I mentioned that before, but that's the one we come back to all the time. So when we have those peer support, our peer support team, when they meet with the individuals, a lot of times those first conversations is yes, you're experiencing these stresses, yes, you experience this traumatic event, but how are you sleeping, right? Are you sleeping at all? Shocker, they're not sleeping, right? Well, let's talk about that. How do we improve that? What are you eating? Well, I'm not eating anything, right? Because all I'm thinking about is this incident. Okay, let's work on that. Let's work on these base things, because a lot of times the downstream effects from not sleeping, not eating, not moving well is these stressors, right? And it just adds to and compounds those things. So that's going to be our first one. And like I talked about, with that physical, we have access to the gyms. And we talk about sleeping, nutrition, and moving well. So we're bringing in speakers from time to time. for our department to talk about, okay, what are the best things for nutrition for our employees, right? First responders. A lot of our employees work at night. I don't know if you guys know what's open at night nowadays. Not a whole lot after COVID, right? You got a Subway, maybe a gas station. Well, how can we bring our own food? How can we meal prep? What are these best practices we can do? We've also noticed that one of the leading causes of death amongst officers year to year is heart health issues, right? So what are some things that we can do to address that? So every year we have a required annual physical through employee health. And we've noticed in the last few years that, are we doing the best we can for our officers? And it turns out we could be doing better. And so in this last couple of years, we've implemented a comprehensive heart screening, an advanced cardiac screening. So that includes coronary calcium scans. So if you haven't heard of that, I'm sure you've all been to the doctor and they talk about HDL, LDL. Well, they found that that's maybe not the best determination for heart issues, right? So, but this coronary scan where it scans your coronaries for the calcium buildup, that's a better determination and can catch earlier for the effects of later heart disease. So we're able to catch those things earlier. We're able to diagnose them earlier. We're able to get our officers the help they need earlier so those long-term effects don't happen. And then we also have the comprehensive stress tests that we're doing to also help with those, addressing those issues earlier. Moving on to the financial stuff. So this is also very important, right? So when we talk about holistic wellness, we want to include that financial piece. We want to make sure not only are officers doing well when they come in, right, but we want to make sure that they're preparing themselves for the future, short-term as well as long-term into retirement. So what does that look like? When the officers come in the academy, they are getting basic financial information. Here's the money you're receiving. How do you set up a savings plan? How do you pay off that college debt that you may have? How do you set up, whatever it be into the pension, whether it be a 457, whether it be a 401k, let's start setting that money aside now, right? I didn't learn about compound interest until I was about 10 years into the job. Well, how disappointing because of all the money I've lost, right? But if we get to them early, we can save them a lot of money and set them up better for retirement. And that goes into our mission of every officer, happy, healthy, wealthy, right? We want to make sure you're not only happy and healthy and wealthy now, but also into retirement. Some other things that we do for that is we do that continuing education from time to time. We're talking about different things like life insurance, right? How do you set up for that pension? How do you set up for that 457? Maybe what does that retirement look like? What is the best time to retire? Different things like that so that we can help people into retirement. Talking about mental health now, and we've covered that a little bit. What's important there is it's a very broad thing, right? And how can we best do that? So we have the peer support teams, we have the annual mental health checks that we're doing, or the mental wellness checks that we're doing, and that's something very important to us. And to answer one of your questions earlier is, are we going to bring on someone within the department to be a therapist? Okay, that's an easy question, but a hard answer. And the reason for that is we keep going back to this word of stigma, right? And the stigma is, and it's been there a long time, it's better now with the young people, but it's still difficult of, if I go to someone in-house, right? Because their office is right over there, and everybody sees it, right? I see them go in there, what are they talking about? Right? Well, that person has a problem now because they went in there. Okay, well, now they're labeled, right? And that's the stigma we deal with. And so when we were discussing, okay, do we do an elected mental health check or do we require it? Well, why would we require it? That seems like anytime you force somebody to do something, it's a terrible idea. Well, now that everyone's required to go, there's no stigma there, right? Because you're going there, well, you're supposed to go there. I have to go there. Whether you're being honest or not with your buddies, that's what you have to do. And now we can start to wear that down, right? So maybe we don't catch you on the first one. You go in, you answer the questions, you tell them you're doing okay, right? But on the second one, we'll get you. Because you know what? You come in the second time, and what does the therapist say? Hey, how's everything going? Oh, it's going great. Is it going great? You know what? You got me. It's not going so hot, right? And we slowly start to wear them down, and we make it so, just like our physical routines, I can't work out twice a year and be prepared for our annual physical assessment, right? I need to do that on a weekly basis. Well, let's start making that mental health stuff, just like brushing our teeth. It's something we do on a regular basis, right? And so that's ultimately our goal there. And our last one, the one I'd like to talk about, is the spirit one, so in the middle. And this is the one where, it can be religious, but it doesn't have to be religious. It focuses on self. So we have that chaplain program. We have them coming in. We have different things that they do for the religious aspect. But with that spirit, what we're focusing on is self, right? Self-improvement. And the big thing, the three big things that we go through, right, that everyone struggles with, and probably one of the bigger forms of depression and mental health issues within our industry, is, am I being the best person I can be? Right? Every day that I come to work, I'm trying to be the best person I can be. Am I achieving that? Am I living up to my potential? When whoever put the badge on me, am I honoring that? Right? Am I living up to this thing? It's heavy, right? It's not really heavy, but it's heavy metaphorically to us, right? The second one is, am I living up to the purpose of my career? Right? Am I doing something worthwhile? Is every day I get out of bed, do I just feel that spirit? Do I feel that fire to go to work? And some of us lose that after a while, because we have to change that. So we're working on that as well. And then the last one is that relationship piece, right? Not only relationships with ourselves, relationships with our coworkers, but relationships with our families. And we want to bring that family piece in. It's not always the easiest thing, right? But it's something we're working on, because we recognize that our spouses, our families, they're doing this career too, right? And you can see that. After the events of July 14th, my wife was really into all this stuff. And I just thought to myself, like, it didn't happen to you, right? But I was so wrong, because it did happen to her. She's part of this, right? And we need to recognize that. And as Sergeant Gamrat said, and he said this before during traumatic events, you're going to know your law enforcement officer the best. You're going to recognize when they have issues, right? And you're going to be able to tell us. So figuring out exactly how to set up that pipeline of, hey, this is who I am. I am this person within the department. Here's my number, all of the family members. Anytime there's a problem with your law enforcement officer, text me, call me, I don't care. I want to know, we want to know, because we care about you, right? And we might want to make sure that you're doing well. That's all I have. Is there any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's really all we got as far as presentations. As you can see, like, I answered the first question that was asked, I think, through all of this presentation, is we take it very seriously, and it's one of our top priorities. The department has done a really good job. Jess is pretty humbled. She did a ton of work. One of the only departments that the program has said has implemented every facet of Valor to the entire department in one sitting. So kudos to her. She did a super great job with that. So as you can see, all these things really kind of working together. We moved from peer support, which we had many, many years ago, into Valor, into this wellness stuff. And what we're finding is that all of that, encompassed with bringing your families into it and everything, is really helping us. And the department is just, I think, on the cutting edge of all of that. So very, very happy for the opportunity to kind of give you a glimpse into what they do for us. And again, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, just let me know and we'll do our best to answer them.
I have a question. So you have these wellness things that you want everyone to do every year, of these mental health checks. Now, if there is a concern, what's the process there? Like if...
With the mental health, so like if...
Yeah, like if you go and you have your check-in and maybe you're not doing so hot, and there's like the privacy of healthcare and stuff like that. Like, but if there was a concern, would somebody be reaching out, or, because sometimes there could be something wrong, but you're pushing it down, and that, like you said, obvious to everyone around you, right?
Yep.
But then you're just kind of ignoring it or whatever. So if there is a problem, how do you...
The department has done a great job with that. They give you the time to make sure that you get that fixed. And so it's not that they need to know what it is or what it is you're dealing with. They just know that you're dealing with something, and it's something that we're gonna give you time to fix. That's one thing that you want to comment on it?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I just came up here.
Oh.
I actually just had mine, so I figured I'd come here up and talk about it. It's very basic. and you fill out like a PTSD's questionnaire and kind of a stress questionnaire. And ironically, they call you out because you lied on it. And so then you just kind of have those conversations, right? It's a real icebreaker. But they offer you continued services if you want that, or they recommend that kind of stuff. It's just like going to any other therapy session if anybody wanted to go. If there's certain things that come up, you know, suicidal ideation, all those kinds of things, like you're going to harm yourself, somebody else, they're mandated reporters just like they were there. So there's no shroud just because we're police officers. But a lot of it kind of stems from taking it upon yourself to maybe get some more help. If there was something that was to the extreme, there maybe would be something. But as far as the department goes, they're not finding out anything about what we've talked about or who we are, what we're talking about in these sessions. So it's nothing's shared with, you know, the higher ups or anything like that.
So if there was maybe something someone needed to work on it, that's just on them to kind of.
Just like anything,
Yep.
you know, just like with your heart or anything like that, you know, if you need to take your cholesterol medicine, like it's on me to take a pill every day, right? And that kind of, we have to kind of flip that upside down with mental health and kind of treat it the same way, where like it's on me to be the best person that I can be. That goes with physical health, mental health, all those kinds of things. So.
All right.
I'll go sit down.
Yeah, one thing I'll add on to that is like I was talking about, the department has not set it up as a gotcha thing. They have really brought all of these things to the forefront and just want to make sure that they're struggling well, right? And making sure that they're taking care of themselves and we're taking care of them best we can. So they've been super supportive with that.
That's great. Any other questions from the board?
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other business from the board? No? We're a little, close up a little bit early, but hearing that there's no other business, I will call the meeting of the Police Advisory Board adjourned, and our next meeting will be October 12th, 2023 at 5 p.m.